ancient superstition or real-life vampire? There's one way to find out. Is there a witch dwelling in this cave? It might be safer not to go searching. Spend the night alone in this haunted prison? You might run into something unexpected. Be careful what you invite. It may be your worst nightmare to go digging up night visitors.
Wait, do you need something?
Yeah.
Today, the curious still search for the spirit that dwells here. But some places are better left undisturbed. The Bell Witch Cave is one of them. Early in the 19th century, northwestern Tennessee was still on the American frontier. Men like John Bell, a farmer from North Carolina, were lured to the vast open spaces. In the spring of 1813, John Bell followed his dream and moved his family to the town of Adams, Tennessee, on the twisting Red River that separates Tennessee from Kentucky. John and his wife Lucy, his sons Richard and Drury, and daughter Betsy settled in easily. For the first few months, the summer days were peaceful. But soon, something different crept into their lives, something no one can explain.
The beginning of, I guess you would say, the coming of the witch took place in 1817. That's kind of the date when people have narrowed down that odd things started to happen.
The sounds are like the shocks of an earthquake, but the tremors are felt only around the Bell house, and the noises are terrifying. Weeks go by. The noises outside the house grow louder. Soon they don't let up. Then one night, the sounds move inside.
It was knocking sounds, tapping, scratching, sounds of somebody dragging chains through the house. Anything it could do to harass them, it would keep them up all night long.
A noise commenced in our room, like a rat gnawing vigorously on the bedpost. There was no such thing as sleep to be thought of, until the noise ceased, which was usually about 3 o'clock in the morning. Richard Bell.
These people that were witnessing this event, they were not crazy, they were not strange, they were very ordinary people for the time, and what happened to them was not ordinary.
The things that she went through for a young adolescent girl had to have been unbearable. She couldn't see these hands that were doing them to her. How the witch accomplished it, we don't know.
At first, the Bells remain quiet about what they call the family problem. John Bell doesn't want neighbors to know something out of the ordinary is going on in his home.
It traumatized the family. They did not know how to deal with this. I'm not sure that anyone would know how to deal with this at the time or even today.
John Bell finally seeks outside help. He turns to his neighbor, James Johnston, a headstrong, religious man who thinks the solution may be in the Bible.
They brought him in. to try to get rid of this, whatever it was. They weren't sure in the beginning. They called it a problem. They called it a spirit. You know, some named it poltergeist.
He was the first person to ask the classic question, and that would be, in the name of the Lord, who are you, what are you, and what do you want?
I am a spirit. I have been disturbed.
The nightmare is just beginning. Now the spirit has a voice. Word of the demon spreads, and the people of Adam start to call it the Bell Witch.
I do not remember the first intelligent utterance, but the voice soon developed sufficient strength to be distinctly heard by everyone in the room. Richard Bell.
You won't get away with this!
The witch attracts people from far and wide. One who comes to offer help is General Andrew Jackson, not yet president, and just 3 years following the Battle of New Orleans, where he had met the Bell's grown son, John Jr. The night he arrives, Jackson comes face to face with the presence of the Bell Witch. Brave as he is, Jackson flees before night's end, when he reportedly declares, "I would rather face the whole of the British Army than deal with the wrath of the Bell Witch."
You won't get away.
Why the witch hated John Bell, we'll never know. We'll never know. She never said why she hated him so much, but she did say that she would stay on him and be on his back until the day he died.
Medicine finished him off. It was a poison that was not supposed to be there. The doctor was even brought in. It was definitely some powerful poison.
John Bell has been referred to many times as the only man in history that's ever been killed by a spirit.
John Bell. You got yours.
During the funeral, she began singing, cursing, and laughing so loud that no one could even hear the pastor talking, celebrating the fact that her arch enemy was finally gone.
After John Bell's funeral, the family moves far away from Adams, and the house sits abandoned for many years. As if she had disappeared just yesterday, the witch remains on the minds of many.
There was one uninvited guest that would not let them rest, tormented old John Bell to his grave.
My personal take is the witch never left the place to begin with. I think this spirit is a part of the land. I think that Bell spirit has always been there.
She seems to be just something beyond our comprehension, and what she was, we'll never really know. Where she went, I still think she's here.
10 years ago, Chris Kirby and her husband purchased the Old Bell Cave. Some say they got more than they bargained for.
I've heard enough things in there to know that I don't want to go in there by myself. As long as somebody's with me, I'm okay. I don't panic or get scared, but no, I won't go in there by myself.
Deep in Bell Hollow, a dark cavern may be the hiding place for more than just bats.
I've heard some things in there that, boy, you shouldn't be hearing in a cave. I've heard growling sounds in there. I've heard what sounded like a scream. Until you've been there and you've experienced this yourself, I know it's hard to believe, but until you've witnessed it yourself, I know there's something there, but I just don't know what it is.
I've been working late at night. The hair starts rising on my arms. I know it's time to go. You just feel like there's somebody around you.
There's still something that exists here today that I can't explain, nor can anyone else.
The past will always be a disturbing memory, but the scariest part of the Bell Witch haunting is wondering where she is today and if she'll ever return. Legends about the dead coming back to life are as old as humankind. Vampires are among the most chilling. Roots of the familiar vampire myth date back to 15th century Romania and the demonic ruler Vlad the Impaler. His many enemies called him Dracula, son of the devil. Vlad had a penchant for impaling people on wooden stakes, relishing in their torturous deaths and lusting for their blood. 4 centuries later, Bram Stoker made Dracula a household name. Most of what we know about vampires today comes from Stoker's 1897 novel. He turned Vlad's sadistic bloodlust into a mysterious, sensual desire.
One expert has described it as a union deeper and more profound than mere copulation.
In the 19th century Gothic, it's very, very direct. I mean, Dracula is all about sex.
In one form or another, vampires were also found in places outside Eastern Europe. Years before Stoker's Dracula was published, reports about the undead were heard even in America.
Bram Stoker only had 2 newspaper articles among his papers while he was writing the novel Dracula. And in there was a report of a series of vampires from Rhode Island.
Although Rhode Island vampires were thought to feed on a victim's life force rather than blood, many experts believe the novel Dracula was in part based on events in Exeter, Rhode Island, which are every bit as grisly as the bloodthirsty count in Stoker's own story.
Rhode Island somehow has managed to achieve more vampire folklore than any other area. We have more accounts of vampire folklore and actual legendary people who were believed to be vampires here than anywhere else outside of really Eastern Europe.
How the vampire belief was imported to Victorian America is a mystery, but the reason it spread is not.
Fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of disease, fear.
fear of the beloved dead coming back. They come back. They could lure you into communion with them. That means you've got to die to join with the beloved dead. There's no other way.
In the late 1800s, a killer is loose in New England. A mysterious epidemic means certain death to thousands of people who have no idea about its cause. Some refer to it as consumption, others the White Plague, which might be called red for the blood coughed up by its victims. In small remote villages, such as Exeter, Rhode Island, the disease spreads like wildfire through one family after another. In the winter of 1883, George Brown, a farmer in Exeter, loses his wife Mary in a slow, painful death. The following spring, Brown's oldest daughter, Olive, succumbs to the same wasting condition. Day by day, she becomes more pale and anemic. Olive is haunted by nightmares in which she is lured into death by a shadowy figure who steals her breath and drains her life force. In the throes of such a dream, she dies. The next victim is George Brown's only son, Edwin. He too suffers terrifying dreams where breath and blood seem to be sucked from his body. While Edwin is on the brink of death, his younger sister Mercy falls violently ill, but she doesn't linger.
It's clear that they tried other remedies. I mean, they really were desperate. They were desperate enough even to go to the one doctor in the area, but of course nothing seemed to work.
Fear grips the town. Once Edwin's gone, people wonder who will be next. They suspect the infection is spread by something, but they don't know what. Finally, they turn to folklore.
We have this expression, may he or she rest in peace. Why shouldn't they remain in peace? They're dead. But maybe they aren't really dead, and maybe they'll come back. So for God's sake, may they rest in peace.
What was once unthinkable is now making sense. If the solution can't be found among the living, perhaps the secret lies buried with the dead.
The vampire would enter the dwelling, usually at the invite of a person within or in the form of a dream, and then attack the person by drawing forth their breath and drawing out the life energy.
Back in Exeter, town elder William Rose takes charge. In an emotional appeal, Rose claims the undead must be returning from the grave to feed upon the living. He suspects one of the Browns is spreading the infection to surviving family members and convinces George Brown that the only way to save Edwin is to exhume the bodies.
We know it was sanctioned. We know that they didn't have to come in the dead of night or anything else. I'm sure they probably came in broad daylight, walked right past the old church and into the cemetery.
What makes Mercy Brown's case important in the history of vampirism is that those who went out to the graveyard were intelligent, upper-class people, not a bunch of superstitious peasants.
When the heart was removed, even Dr. Metcalf admitted that the fact that the heart contained liquid blood and was found to be dripping blood was unusual.
Unlike in the Transylvanian folklore, the point is not just to put a stake through the heart of the vampire. There was a belief that you could actually get some kind of benefit out of a potion of ashes made from your burned heart.
But it didn't work for Edwin. Within the week, he died. The case of Mercy Brown, America's last suspected vampire, ended reports of superstitious mutilation in New England. Also ending was the local epidemic. Mysteriously, there were no further cases of consumption in Exeter, Rhode Island. Up next, a prison ruin is haunted by 1,000 souls from its tortured past.
Feeling I was being watched real intensely. And I turned, looking down the block, and I know there's nobody there. A couple seconds later, I get the same feeling. I'm really being watched, and I turn around, I look down the block, I don't see anything. And as I started to turn back to the block, this black shadow just leaped across the block.
When its doors opened in 1829, it was the world's most famous prison. Today, it's a crumbling ruin. Empty. Or is it? Would you spend the night alone in this penitentiary to find out?
I would not stay here overnight. I would not stay here overnight. The idea of staying in this penitentiary alone is just overwhelming.
In 1787, a group of Philadelphians met in the home of Benjamin Franklin to address the inhumane conditions in their prisons. A change from whips and pillories to solitary confinement was proposed. Penitence was a Pennsylvania Quaker concept, and they invented the term penitentiary to describe it.
Went to extensive lengths to keep the inmates in isolation, holding one inmate per cell, of course. Inmates worked in their cells, they slept in their cells, they had running water in the cells, which was very unusual. Even White House did not have running water in the 1830s, when inmates here had flush toilets.
The facilities may have been modern, but life inside was still unbearable. The cell doors were small, forcing prisoners to stoop as a reminder to be humble. They were to repent under what the Quakers called the Eye of God, a tiny skylight in each cell. From the beginning, there are those who called the system cruel. English writer Charles Dickens was one of them. In 1842, he visited America with a strange sightseeing list: Niagara Falls and Eastern State Penitentiary. When he returned to England, he lashed out against the new prison. I hold this slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the human brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body.
In this penitentiary, there was untold, unfathomable anguish and horror. How many people did indeed lose their minds here? Who knows what psychically is within these walls? Those who have experienced the ghosts of Eastern State Penitentiary do know.
If there are ghosts anywhere, they would be here. It feels like someone was just there, just a minute ago.
There is no question that there are spirits here. You had people like Al Capone here, and people who committed murder and stole things. This place was filled with a lot of negative, nasty people. What kind of energy did they leave behind them? What little bits of them can you feel?
The isolation took its toll. For a century and a half, countless souls passed through these cell blocks on their way to misery, death, sometimes insanity. Their names are lost to history. By the early 1900s, thinking had changed and the Pennsylvania model was abandoned. For 60 years, Eastern was a prison like any other. In 1971, time stopped at Eastern. Costly repairs were more than the state was willing to invest, and inmates were moved out. Its doors were locked up for the last time.
Right here in Philadelphia, Eastern State Penitentiary, we've got the real haunted house here.
The hospital block would be an obvious place to, if you believed in ghosts, to either avoid or to go explore, depending on what you're trying to achieve. I do know that of at least 2 times that inmates were stabbed by other inmates and were taken back to that hospital, and both of them did not make it.
So I got to the edge of the door, and I got real close, and I'm trying to peek in the doorway, and I could feel the cold coming out.
Would you spend the night alone in this haunted prison? You may run into things you'd be too afraid to see and too terrified to remember.
So much did happen here that there's the potential for a lot of unsettled business to be hanging around. I think that's my fear, is stumbling upon some unsettled business.
If people could have seen that ghost, maybe people would believe that there's a lot in this universe that we don't really know about.
Coming next, this mysterious covered bridge seems to span time itself. And on the other side, a lonely young girl is waiting. In Vermont, clouds float across the mountain tops in sheets, changing shapes, then disappearing like ghosts. But deep in the valley of Snow Hollow, another shape appears at night on a mysterious covered bridge that seems to span time.
Meet me at the bridge, and I'll take you away forever. Those words rang out in her ears as she waited on that bridge. She waited and she waited. Hour after hour went by, and there was no sign of this man. Her hopes were just dashed. By midnight, the hours had ticked away, and she became more and more desperate. And she saw no alternative than to take her own life.
Legend says she was taken to the village cemetery. But after a century and a half, her whereabouts remain a mystery.
Whether it's a truth or a fiction, that bridge is still repeatedly the focus of paranormal activity, and I hear about Emily more than I hear about any other spot. I've heard a number of stories of people who have actually seen what they almost consistently describe as a white, filmy shape, just sort of gliding along.
It's a very eerie feeling. People have gone to the bridge and have seen a figure, and they can hear her calling out.
Help me! Help!
She apparently talks to people. People repeatedly report hearing something that sounds like speech on the bridge.
Help me! Help!
She never left. She committed suicide, but her spirit never left that bridge. She's still waiting and waiting.
Help me! Help
me! Today, townspeople know it as Emily's Bridge. And they say on certain foggy nights, when you look inside, you can see clear across time and imagine the day Emily's spirit might finally go free. Coming next, looming over this cliff on the New England seacoast, this medieval castle is filled with mysteries from its past and ghosts. A mystery hangs over this cliff on the coast of Cape Ann, Massachusetts. On the outside, this is to be a medieval fortress from the days of knights and crusaders. But inside, the mystery deepens. No matter where you look, unexplained remnants of the past make this America's most haunted castle. The spirit of John Hayes Hammond might be found lingering anywhere in his domain. And 3 decades after his death, he doesn't appear ready to depart.
There's a presence here. I mean, I cannot believe for 1 minute that this man that believed in reincarnation and believed that he would come back in some other form is not here. He said he would come back as a black cat.
You can see the cat watch rooms, and you can see that the cat was focusing on images in the room.
In 1926, John Hayes Hammond built this seaside fortress as a safe haven for himself and his new wife, Irene, christening it Abbadia Mare, Abbey by the Sea. Today, it's simply called Hammond Castle. This was a strange wedding present, but perhaps not as strange as the man himself. Hammond has been called everything from a gifted inventor to a mad scientist. Some believe he shut himself up inside these walls to keep out the world. Others say it was to keep his secrets safe inside.
He was very much believing in reincarnation in other worlds. He did a number of experiments toward what happens to us when we die.
Suggest his supernatural experiments were not always performed on the living.
working on cadavers to see if he could bring back the dead.
I think of him as a pure scientist, all 360 degrees of science. I'm not certainly saying that he was a Dr. Frankenstein, as the Mary Shelley stories tell us, but he was very much interested in what happens to us upon death.
This element of control is pervasive throughout the whole building. The man wanted to control things, every facet of life, if he could get his hands on it.
Control crept into many of Hammond's inventions. He's considered the creator of wireless remote control, and his innovations led to the development of the radio tube and stereo sound. He held more patents than any American except Thomas Edison. John Hammond worked with an eye to the future, but he and his wife surrounded themselves with the past. They traveled from Europe to the Orient, bringing back trunks full of artifacts, a collection that spans time.
There's something about this place. There's a timelessness when you bring back these parts of historic buildings and pieces of furniture from another era. You bring back the inhabitants with it.
Along with their mysteries, and the castle is full of them. The spirit of a young child entombed for centuries in a sarcophagus brought here from Rome by Hammond. The souls who dwell behind the wall of a 15th century chateau, which Hammond uncovered in southern France. The specter of a sailor from the ship of Christopher Columbus still drifts around his skull.
You see shadows and images in the building. Noises, whisperings.
He's definitely here, and there's more than him here.
Like Hammond, his wife was a believer in the spirit world, and when she died, several years before he did, overnight, more mysteries erupted.
They have heard the voice of a woman in a room. They have seen a woman go from one room to another room and then have summoned the maintenance people to go into that room to see who that was, and there was nobody there.
How do you really explain it? Unless you've had an experience like this, how do you explain it?
Fascinated with. Have we been here before? We're definitely here now, but can we be here again?
John Hayes Hammond seemed determined to solve the mysteries of the supernatural. How well he succeeded, we may never know. At least not in this world. So much in our universe is yet to be discovered. So many things remain to be understood. We cross bridges to the past, catch glimpses of other worlds, and fear the unknown. Always wondering, have we been here before? And is it possible we may come back again? But the more we try to solve the mystery of time, the more we find time itself may be just an illusion.